All right. Hi, everybody. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. This week, we are talking about, by popular demand, how you can add that second dog to your walk if you have two dogs at home, but one of them is reactive. Um, and maybe you've worked with your reactive dog and they're doing much better, but as soon as you introduce the second dog and try to walk two dogs together, it all falls apart. We've had this question a lot, so we're going to actually spend a few weeks, a few sessions talking about this. Um, and as usual, please let me know if you can hear me. If you have a question, go ahead and post it under the video. I should be able to get most of them. All right, I'm going to jump right into the slides and we're going to talk about kind of the big picture of what do you need to start incorporating that second dog into the walk. And then we'll look at first steps in training, what we'd recommend trying out. Okay, so walking your reactive dog with another dog. And for the most part, this is going to apply to those of you who have, more than one dog at home, and one of them is the special, the special dog that needs a little more help. And before we talk about how to introduce that second dog to start walking dogs together, I did want to talk about whether or not um, it's a good idea for you to add that second dog. And it isn't always. Um, so there are some things to think about that in terms of safety and also your own stress level that I'd like you to consider before you jump in and start doing some training. If you think about the worst case scenario, say you're out with two dogs and it's just you holding two leashes, and the worst thing you can think of happens, like you get charged by a big off leash dog or whatever your dog's trigger is. If you, in that situation, if you think there is no way I could hold on to both dogs safely, or that would be so, I would really freak out, that would be so stressful for me, then you might not want to go further with this. You might not want to try to walk the two dogs together by yourself. This is especially true if you've got big, strong dogs and you're just not sure that you can hang on, excuse me, that you can hang on to them, or if you did, you might be taken down, to the ground. And if you're more prone to injury for whatever reason, or unsteady on your feet, or small compared to your dogs, this might not be worth the risk. So just something to consider. It's definitely not for everybody to try to walk two dogs together, especially when one is reactive, and especially if they're big dogs. All right, moving on. So what do we need to walk dogs together? It's more complicated maybe than most people seem to think it is. Those of you who have tried, say, doing some training with your reactive dog and, oh, they're doing pretty well now, and now I'm just going to try to walk them with my other dog, and you realize, oh my God, this, uh, it's like I didn't train my reactive dog at all. Everything just goes to heck, basically. That's because there are a good number of dog skills and human skills that you need in place so that you can make this possible and, ideally at least a little bit enjoyable for you. So individual dogs need to have these skills on their own before you try to walk the dogs together. So both of your dogs should be able to walk relatively well on a loose leash. It doesn't have to be perfect, but whatever is good enough for you. And they should be able to respond to one or more cues. Watch, touch, find it, whatever you like to use on walks. And this also goes for your reactive dog. Your reactive dog should be able to do most of the things you would like them to do on a walk on their own before you consider adding that second dog. And believe me, I know that's frustrating because it takes a while to get a reactive dog to the point where they're pretty reliable and responsive on their walks. But it'll make it miserable for you if you try too soon. And I know this from personal experience because I resisted for a long time the idea of spending sort of double walking time, walking my reactive dog separately and doing all the training separately. But we weren't able to make progress until I accepted that I needed to do that. So I know where you're coming from if you're like, oh God, I don't want to do all this extra training, but usually there's no way around it. So once each dog on their own can do those things, you now need them to know how to do them together. And this is different. So just because your dog, and I'm sure you've noticed this, just because your dog can walk nicely with you on leash, um, by themselves doesn't mean that they will not pull like crazy once you have the other dog with you. This happens a lot. And I think it's partly because, when dogs are exploring and checking things out, there's some um, social facilitation of sniffing areas or whatever. So if one dog runs over to sniff an area, the other dog rushes over to sniff the same area, and you end up with a lot more pulling. So it takes some extra training to get them to remember how to walk on leash when there's more than one dog there. Those on cue behaviors, whatever you want to be able to ask your dog to do, especially when they see a trigger, your reactive dog, but could be some look at you, sit, hand touch, find it. They need to know how to do those when the other dog is present also, because that really changes the picture. And there's an extra skill that is really helpful if you're going to be training in any context, training two or more dogs together. And that is just wait a second. If you're delivering a treat or something to one dog, you don't want the other dog lunging for it. You could end up with a fight, worst case scenario, or it just will make your training difficult. So actually, this is what we're going to talk about next week, is teaching our dogs to wait for the other dog to get their treat. And then there are human skills as well that have nothing to do with, they have nothing to do with dog skills, but they're on top of all the things we need to teach our dogs. We have to learn how to manage two leashes without ending up like this poor lady with the leashes twisted around her knees. um, and that's no small feat if you've walked two dogs before together, especially active dogs that like to move around a lot. You have to practice and get pretty comfortable with delivering positive reinforcement to both dogs. Now, depending on what your positive reinforcement is, that could be easier or more difficult. If you use praise and that actually works for your dogs, it's not that hard to do for two dogs at once. But if you're trying to deliver treats or toys, it can get a little messy. You only have two hands, and there's a good chance that both of them are occupied with leashes. So this can get tricky and is definitely a skill to work on. And we'll also get into that in the coming weeks. And then I put fast reinforcement here because remember, if you've got two dogs and you're trying to reward each of them for good behavior, probably best case scenario, each dog is getting about half as much reinforcement as they would when you're just focusing on one dog at a time. And so that's a pretty big decrease in rate of reinforcement. So that's another reason, I think, why people say, well, why does my dog do so well when I walk them together or walk them on their own, but not together? And one reason is that it's hard to provide the same rate of reinforcement for stuff we like when you're trying to manage more than one dog. So getting pretty quick, pretty snappy with your reinforcement will help you when you're working with more than one dog at once. Okay, so the first set of skills I wanted to talk about this week, we decided to break this down into a few different sessions so it's not too much, are just dog skills. So we can put aside those extra skills for humans for now, the handling multiple leashes and treats and all that stuff, and just talk about, okay, well, if we've got two dogs who individually know how to do things we like on walks, like walk relatively nicely on leash, can respond to cues, then how can we take those skills and start bringing them together with the two dogs at the same time? So I'll just show you some short video on this, and it kind of depends on your dog. So for some dogs, you want to start with whatever the easiest version is for them of walking with their friend or with their housemate. Usually you're going to want, well, not usually, you are going to want two handlers for this, two adults. So if you have another adult in the household, maybe they can help you. If not, a friend or family member, maybe you can recruit to give you some help. And probably if you do have someone kind of outside the family helping you, you want to give them the easier dog of your two dogs. So you would handle your reactive dog. For many dogs, it's easier for them to start really far apart. And you would practice that leash walking and responding to their cues and getting the reinforcement. But for some dogs, being really far apart is hard because they want to get together. So you can experiment if you try this. If your dog starts struggling, you could say, well, let's go even farther apart. Is that better? If not, well, maybe it's easier to walk a little closer together so they're not pulling to get to each other. So it just depends on your dog. So you're going to work on the walking part, throw in your cues, whatever cues you'd like your dogs to respond to. And then you'll end up, after this first stage in the training, you'll end up with the two dogs actually walking together, but with one person per leash. So you still have two handlers. All right, let's see if I can jump into, oh, just a second. I think I screwed up. Okay, here we go. All right, so step one of this training is find that easiest version of walking and training together, as quiet of a location as you can find. And I know everyone's got, a different version of this. This might involve, if you have the option, getting in the car and driving away from where you live. And like I said, for many dogs, far apart will be easier than walking close together, but not all of them. So again, that's just something to experiment with. All right. So here are this is Zuma, is the more reactive dog here. She's the shepherd, and she's being handled by our trainer, Melissa. And then her good-natured husband is handling Pepper, the smaller dog. And they're just showing, going to a quiet park in the middle of a weekday. So there wasn't a lot going on as during a school day, and practicing pretty far apart at first. And you'll see periodically both dogs are getting reinforced, giving treats for either sniffing on the ground, like they're tossing treats on the ground for them to find, or I think Pepper's offering some sits, the smaller dog, and getting treats for that. So there Pepper is sitting and her dad's going to give her something. And there Melissa tossed some treats to do a find it for Zuma. So you're not just walking, you'll be practicing some of these skills as well. Oops, sorry, I've lost my mouse. Here it is. Okay, so that first step, just far apart, take it easy, hopefully an easy location, practice those cues that both dogs know on their own. Once they get really good at that, you can, you're still gonna, every step of the way here, you're working on polite leash walking and doing whatever behaviors you want them to do. In addition to that, the look at me, find it, etc. And you're just gonna make it a little tougher in step two. And for many dogs, that's gonna mean a little closer together. But, for your dog, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if closer is harder or not. So now those same two dogs, same park. Now you see they're quite a bit closer together. And same thing, they're getting rewarded for hanging out by their handler, their person. Their Zuma did some look at mom. And here they're a little closer yet. We have wide bike lanes in our area. So they're working on hanging out in the bike lane. Pepper is really curious about what Zuma is getting over there. All right. And then you'll slowly work toward having the dogs work together or walk together, like on the sidewalk, about as close as you would need them to be if you were walking them by yourself. So same thing, you'll be asking for whatever behaviors you like. But each dog will have their own person still. So remember, we're kind of focusing on dog skills and less on people skills this week. It's hard enough to do one at a time without sticking them all together. And so this is kind of what I have in mind, just walking together about how as close as they would need to be once you have both leashes in your hand. And they'll pause here and do some, do some find its. There, I think Zuma just did some find it on the ground, toss treats there. Pepper gets some find it away from Zuma. Such a cutie. All right. So, I hope you guys can't hear that background noise too much. I just moved my office and I'm actually farther away from where there should be noise, but okay. So, okay, we just covered those two. All right, so that was all I wanted to cover today because that is more than enough to work on for a week. And next week, we're going to talk about working with 2 dogs at once with food reinforcement and how to teach a little bit of a wait. So this week, if you want to work on this, if you and remember, both dogs need to be kind of where you want them to be on their own first. And I know it's tempting to push it, but usually that doesn't turn out well if you do push too hard. So if your dogs are ready, you think to start working together, then this is what I would work on this week. Recruit a helper, make your spouse help you, whatever, or a kid or a friend, and just work on this in a quiet area. See if they can walk together nicely when there are 2 handlers, 2 people. All right. Any questions about this first step in training for getting multiple dogs to walk together? I'm going to return my face. All right. Um, just pop any questions you have under the video. If there aren't any, then I'll see all of you online this week, and also see you on Monday next week to talk about more multiple dog training. All right. This is a short one today, but that's probably for the best. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful week. Like I said, I'll see you next week, same time, same place. If you're not already in our Facebook group, feel free to join. It's attached to our or linked to our page, so you should be able to find it through our page. And I also I'll put up that link one more time. It's here, facebook.com/group/dogkind support. That's our free support group. And we'll be happy to try to help you out there. It's a really nice group of supportive people. All right, everyone. I will talk to you later.